The shuttle landed softly on the crystal platform of Balloon 7. Yuna pressed her face against the window and watched the alien world spread out before her. Everything was soft here. Soft purple grass. Soft golden light from 3 small suns. Soft buildings that curved like flowers reaching toward the sky. It was beautiful, but it felt wrong somehow. Too gentle. Too quiet. She grabbed her single bag and stepped off the shuttle. The gravity here was lighter than Earth. She felt like she could jump over buildings if she tried. But she kept her feet firmly on the ground. She was here to learn, not to show off. The Galactic Academy of Sciences rose before her like a dream made solid. Students of 100 different species walked along the floating pathways. Some had wings. Some had too many legs. Some floated in bubbles of water or special gases. Yuna was the only human. The first human ever to study here. A crystalline being approached her. Its body was made of pale blue glass, and light moved through it like slow lightning. This was Pale Light, her assigned advisor. Yuna had studied the files. She bowed politely. "You are the Earth specimen," Pale Light said. Its voice was like wind chimes in a storm. "Follow me. We must assess your capabilities." Yuna noticed the pause. The doubt. She said nothing and followed. The assessment took 3 hours. They tested her strength, her speed, her reflexes, her intelligence, her emotional responses. Every test came with strange looks from the medical staff. They whispered to each other in languages Yuna did not understand. But she understood their expressions well enough. They were confused, maybe a little frightened. "Your bone density is unusually high," one doctor said. "A tall being with 4 arms and skin like tree bark. Your muscle mass exceeds our standard parameters. Your immune system is aggressive. Is that bad?" Yuna asked. "It is unusual. Your planet must be very demanding." Yuna thought about home. She thought about typhoons and earthquakes. She thought about the wild boars in the mountains and the jellyfish in the sea. She thought about winter mornings when the air was so cold it hurt to breathe, and summer days when the heat pressed down like a heavy blanket. "It can be difficult sometimes," she said simply. Pale Light reviewed her file and made a decision. "You will be placed in remedial courses. Your homeworld's education system is not recognized by the Academy. You will need to prove basic competency before advancing." Yuna felt a small sting of anger, but she kept her face calm. Her mother Yunji had taught her that. Stay calm, work hard. Let your actions speak louder than your words. "I understand," Yuna said. "Thank you for the opportunity." Her dormitory room was small but comfortable. The walls could change color based on her mood, which was a strange feature she did not ask for. She was unpacking her few belongings when the door opened and another student entered. This student was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. She had the body of a woman but covered in soft white fur. Great moth-like wings folded against her back. Her eyes were huge and dark and reflected the light like mirrors. This was Softwing, a Valorian native to this very planet. "Oh," Softwing said, stopping in the doorway. "You are the human." "Yes, I am Yuna. Nice to meet you." Softwing did not come closer. "I read about your planet, Earth. It is classified as a Class 12 death world." Her voice trembled slightly. "Is it true that your atmosphere is made of oxygen, the burning gas?" "About 21% oxygen, yes." Softwing's wings fluttered with distress. "And your planet has seasons?" "Where the temperature changes dramatically." "Yes, where I come from, we have 4 seasons. Summer is hot. Winter is cold. Spring and autumn are in between." "That sounds horrible." Yuna smiled softly. "It can be nice, actually. I like autumn. The leaves change color and fall from the trees. It is very beautiful." Softwing stared at her like she was insane. The plants die every year and you find this beautiful? They do not really die. They sleep. And then they wake up again in spring. This seemed to disturb Soft Wing even more. She quickly gathered some belongings from her side of the room. I am going to request a room transfer. No offense to you personally. I cannot sleep next to someone from a death world. I am sorry. She left before Yuna could respond. Yuna sat on her bed alone. The walls had turned a sad blue color, responding to her emotions. She forced herself to think happy thoughts until they shifted to a neutral gray. Then she continued unpacking. The next day was orientation. Hundreds of new students gathered in a great hall that seemed to have no ceiling, just open sky above them. Professors floated on platforms, introducing themselves and explaining the rules of the academy. One professor, a being made of living smoke, asked students to share something unique about their homeworlds. One by one, students described their planets. Gentle worlds with stable climates. Peaceful worlds with no predators. Worlds where the weather never changed and the ground never shook. Then it was Yuna's turn. She stood up. Everyone looked at her. She was shorter than most of them, smaller, softer in appearance. But she stood straight and spoke clearly. I am from Earth, she said. It is a small planet in a quiet part of the galaxy. We have many interesting things there. One thing I always found special is snow. In winter, water freezes in the clouds and falls to the ground as small white crystals. It covers everything in white. Children play in it and build figures from it. It is very beautiful. The hall was silent. The smoke professor flickered with what might have been concern. Water falls from the sky in frozen form? Yes, sometimes quite heavily. We call it a snowstorm. A student nearby fainted. Medical drones rushed to help them. Yuna looked around at the horrified faces. She had not meant to frighten anyone. Back home, snow was normal. Children loved snow days. Her grandmother Sunoke used to make sweet rice cakes on snowy mornings. She sat down quietly. The student next to her shifted away, creating more distance between them. Yuna understood then that this would not be easy. These beings had never known hardship. They had never fought for survival. They had never watched the sky turn dark with storm clouds and felt that ancient fear mixed with excitement. They did not understand Earth. They did not understand humans. But Yuna was patient. Her father Taiho always said that patience was the greatest strength. Water could wear down stone if given enough time. She would show them. Not through words or arguments. Through action. Through persistence. Through being. Exactly what she was. A daughter of Earth. A child of the Death World. And a student who refused to give up. The orientation continued. Yuna listened and learned and planned. Her journey had just begun. 3 weeks passed at the academy. Yuna learned to navigate the floating pathways without looking down. She learned which foods in the cafeteria were safe for humans and which ones would make her sick. She learned to smile when professors doubted her and to stay quiet when other students whispered about her. The academy had placed her in strange classes. Instead of advanced physics or xenobiology, she was assigned to physical rehabilitation. This was a class designed for students recovering from injuries. The exercises were slow and gentle. Stretching, light walking, breathing techniques. Yuna completed the entire weekly program in her first 10 minutes. The instructor, a jellyfish-like being named Glowdrift, watched her with what might have been amazement. You are not injured, Glowdrift said slowly. No, I am healthy. Then why were you sent to rehabilitation? The assessment said my physical parameters exceeded safe standards. They said I needed supervised activity. Glowdrift's body pulsed with soft colors. I see. Your baseline strength is higher than our injured students at full recovery. This is unexpected. Yuna shrugged. On Earth, this is normal. I'm actually not very strong compared to many humans. My Uncle Jinho could carry 2 bags of rice at once. Each bag weighs 50 kilograms. Glowdrift made a sound like bubbles popping. Yuna later learned this was the equivalent of gasping in shock. Her academic classes were easier in some ways and harder in others. The mathematics came naturally to her. Humans had evolved as pattern seekers, and numbers were just another pattern. She finished tests in half the time given and spent the rest of the period helping confused classmates, but the social aspects were difficult. Most students avoided her. They had heard stories about Earth, a planet of poison air and crushing gravity, a planet where giant reptiles had once ruled and been destroyed by a rock from space, a planet where the intelligent species had split into thousands of tribes and spent centuries fighting each other. One student did not avoid her. His name was Coldscale, and he was the heir to a powerful reptilian family from a desert world. His scales were deep green and his eyes were golden. He walked with the confidence of someone who had never been told no. Coldscale made it his mission to humiliate Yuna. It started small. Comments in the hallway. Jokes at her expense during group discussions. He called her the short-lived one because humans rarely reach 200 years old. Most galactic species live for thousands of years. To them, human lifespans were tragically brief. Why bother studying? Coldscale asked her one day in front of a crowd of students. You will be dead before you can use any of this knowledge. Your species burns bright and fast, like a candle in the wind. Yuna looked at him calmly. A candle can light many other candles before it burns out. And the light continues. Coldscale's golden eyes narrowed. He was not used to being answered back. You think you are clever, Deathworlder? Let us see how clever you are in the survival simulation tomorrow. I bet you will not last 5 minutes. The survival simulation was a famous test at the academy. Students were placed in a controlled environment that mimicked dangerous conditions. They had to find shelter, avoid hazards, and reach a safe zone. Most students prepared for weeks before attempting it. Yuna had only learned about it that morning. The next day, she stood at the entrance to the simulation chamber. Coldscale was there with his friends, waiting to watch her fail. Softwing was there too, standing apart from the crowd, her wings folded tight with anxiety. The instructor explained the rules. The simulation was set to beginner level. Temperature would drop slightly. Wind would increase. Some obstacles would appear. Students typically completed the course in 2 hours. The record was 45 minutes. Yuna entered the chamber. The door closed behind her. The environment shifted. She found herself in a rocky landscape with a gray sky. Wind began to blow. The temperature dropped. Yuna started walking. The cold did not bother her. Korean winters were much worse than this. She remembered walking to school as a child, her breath forming clouds in the air, ice crunching under her boots. This simulation felt like a mild autumn day. She climbed over rocks that the system thought would slow her down. Her dense bones and strong muscles made easy work of the terrain. She jumped across gaps that were meant to require careful navigation. She ignored the warning signs that told her to rest. An artificial predator appeared, a holographic creature designed to frighten students into hiding. Yuna looked at it, calculated its movement pattern, and walked around it without breaking stride. It was slower than a dog, much slower than the wild boars in the mountains near her grandmother's village. She reached the safe zone in 12 minutes. The chamber doors opened. The instructor stood in silence. Coldscale's mouth hung open. The crowd of students stared at her like she was a ghost. Did I do something wrong? Yuna asked. No, the instructor said slowly. You have broken the record. By 33 minutes. Yuna nodded politely. The simulation was well designed. Very relaxing. Relaxing. She had called a survival simulation relaxing. Cold Scale stormed away without a word. But Yuna noticed something in his eyes that had not been there before. Not anger. Fear. That evening, Yuna sat alone in the garden outside her dormitory. The alien flowers glowed softly in the darkness. She missed the smell of earth flowers. She missed the sound of cicadas in summer and the way morning mist hung over the rice fields. A small figure approached her. It was Dory, an amphibian student from a water world. Dory was small and nervous, with blue-green skin that shifted colors with emotion. Other students bullied Dory too, calling them slow and strange. "Hello," Dory said quietly. "May I sit with you?" Of course. They sat together in comfortable silence for a while. "I saw the simulation today," Dory said finally. "You were amazing. I just walked. Nothing special. To you, maybe. To everyone else, it was like watching a legend come to life." Dory's skin flickered with patterns of blue and silver. "The others call your planet a death world. They say it as an insult. But watching you today, I thought maybe it is not an insult at all. Maybe it is something to be proud of." Yuna smiled. It was the first genuine smile she had felt since arriving at the academy. "My grandmother always said that hardship makes you strong," Yuna said. "Not just in body, in heart, in spirit. Every storm you survive teaches you something." "I would like to learn that," Dory said softly. "I am not strong. I am not brave. But I want to be." Yuna looked at this small, frightened creature who had crossed a garden full of hostile students just to sit with her. That took courage. That took strength. "You are braver than you know," Yuna said. "And I can teach you what I know, if you want. We can study together." Dory's skin glowed bright with happiness. "Really? You would do that for me?" "Of course. That is what friends do." Friends. The word hung in the air like a promise. Yuna had come to this academy alone. She had expected to remain alone. But sitting in this strange garden under alien stars, she felt something she had not expected. Hope. Maybe she did not have to survive this place alone. Maybe she could do something better than just survive. Maybe she could help others survive too. The research station floated above a frozen moon, a small bubble of warmth in the endless cold of space. 50 students had traveled here for the third-year field study. They were supposed to observe ice formations and collect samples. It was meant to be safe, routine, boring, even. Yuna stood at the observation window, watching the ice field stretch toward the horizon. The cold beauty reminded her of the mountains in Gangwon Province, where her father Taiho had taken her hiking as a child. She felt a pang of homesickness. "Attention all students," the announcement system crackled. "Please remain calm. We are experiencing minor technical difficulties." The lights flickered. The floor trembled. Outside the window, Yuna saw the shimmer of the station's energy shields flicker and die. That was not minor. Within minutes, chaos erupted. A massive solar flare from the nearby star had released a wave of electromagnetic energy. The station's shields had failed. The heating system had stopped working. Communication arrays were down. The emergency shuttle could not launch because the magnetic interference would crash it into the moon's surface. And the temperature was dropping. Yuna could see her breath forming clouds in the air. To her, this was uncomfortable but manageable. She had experienced worse during camping trips with her uncle, Jinho. But the alien students around her were already suffering. Soft Wing collapsed against the wall, her wings wrapped tight around her body, shivering violently. Cold Scale moved slower and slower, his reptilian blood struggling in the cold. Dory was hyperventilating, their amphibian skin losing moisture rapidly in the dry, cold air. The professors stood frozen with indecision. They had never faced a real emergency. Their species had evolved on gentle worlds. They had no instincts for survival. Someone needed to take command. Yuna made her choice. "Everyone listen to me," she called out, her voice cutting through the panic. "We have maybe 2 hours before this cold becomes deadly for most of you. We need to act now." A crystalline professor flickered with confusion. "You are just a student. A first year. You cannot. I am the only one here who has lived through weather like this," Yuna said firmly. "I know cold. I know survival. Let me help, or more people will die." The word "die" silenced the room. These beings had rarely faced death. They did not know how to process the concept. But they understood that Yuna was serious. "What do we do?" Softwing whispered through chattering teeth. Yuna moved fast. She organized students by their thermal vulnerability. The cold-blooded reptilians and the thin-skinned insectoids were most at risk. She moved them to the center of the station, away from the exterior walls. She ordered everyone to huddle close together, sharing body heat. "Remove unnecessary clothing and press against each other," she instructed. "Body heat transfers better through thin layers. I know this feels strange, but survival is more important than comfort." Students who had ignored her for weeks now obeyed without question. Next, Yuna sealed off corridors leading to the outer sections of the station. Each closed door created a smaller space, easier to keep warm. She found emergency blankets in the supply closets and distributed them to the most vulnerable. But it was not enough. The temperature kept dropping. The heating system, Duri managed to say through shivering lips. "There is a manual override in the engineering section. But that section is already below freezing." Yuna understood. The engineering section was exposed to the exterior. Walking through it would be like walking through a freezer. For any of these alien students, it would mean death within minutes. For Yuna, it would mean discomfort. She grabbed a thin emergency jacket. It was designed for beings who found room temperature chilly. It would do almost nothing against real cold. But it was better than nothing. "I will fix the heating system," she said. Cold Scale reached out a slow, freezing hand and grabbed her arm. His golden eyes were clouded with cold, but something else burned there. Shame, maybe. Or respect. "You will die," he said, his words slurring from the cold. "No," Yuna said simply. "I will be uncomfortable. There is a difference." She walked into the frozen corridor. The cold hit her like a wall. Her breath crystallized instantly in the air. Frost formed on her eyelashes. Her fingers began to ache, then burn, then go numb. She kept walking. She thought about her grandmother, Sunoke. During the war, Sunoke had walked for days through frozen mountains to escape danger. She had survived on melted snow and wild roots. She had lost 2 toes to frostbite but never complained. She had lived to be 93 years old and had died peacefully in her sleep. If Sunoke could survive that, Yuna could survive this. The engineering section was a mess. Fallen panels. Broken equipment. Ice everywhere. Yuna found the heating system and examined it with numb fingers. A conduit had disconnected. Simple fix, if you knew what you were doing. Yuna knew. Back on Earth, her father had taught her how to fix farm equipment. Tractors, generators, water pumps. The principles were the same everywhere. Find the broken part. Reconnect it. Restore the flow. She worked with frozen fingers, fighting the urge to stop and rest. Resting in cold was how you died. You had to keep moving, keep working, keep fighting. The heating system hummed back to life. Warm air began flowing through the vents. Yuna allowed herself a small smile. Then she turned to walk back. That was when she heard the crash. A section of corridor had collapsed. Someone was trapped. She ran toward the sound, her legs stiff and slow from the cold. It was Coldscale. He had tried to follow her, either to help or to prove himself. Now he was pinned under a fallen beam, his cold-blooded body barely moving. Yuna did not hesitate. She grabbed the beam and lifted. It was heavy. Heavy enough that it should have been impossible for her to move. But she thought about her mother Yoonji, who had once lifted a fallen bookshelf off of Yuna when she was a child. Mothers found strength when they needed it. So did daughters. The beam rose. Yuna threw it aside. Coldscale stared at her with something beyond surprise. Beyond fear. Something like awe. "You saved me," he whispered. "Why?" "I was cruel to you." Yuna pulled him to his feet and supported his weight as they walked back toward warmth. "Because that is what you do," she said. "When someone is in trouble, you help them, even if they were not kind to you. That is what my parents taught me." They reached the central area. Students cheered when they saw Yuna carrying Coldscale. Softwing rushed forward with blankets. Dory's skin glowed bright with relief. The heating system worked. The temperature slowly rose. They would survive. A professor approached Yuna as she sat down heavily, exhaustion finally catching up with her. "How did you do that? Walk through that cold? Lift that beam?" Yuna thought about it. About Earth. About humanity. About all the impossible things her species had done throughout history. "The temperature was about -15, she said. "Where I come from, we call that winter camping weather." She paused, remembering something. "My father once got lost in the mountains during a snowstorm. He was missing for 3 days. When they found him, he was cold and hungry, but alive. He said he just kept walking until he found his way home." The professor was silent for a long moment. "Your species, you do not give up." "No," Yuna said, closing her eyes. "We do not. We cannot. Giving up was never an option on our world. You either survived or you did not. We are the children of those who survived." Around her, 50 alien students sat in stunned silence, finally beginning to understand what it meant to come from a death world. It did not mean you were a monster. It meant you were a survivor. The rescue ships arrived 6 hours after Yuna fixed the heating system. Medical teams rushed aboard the station, expecting to find frozen bodies. Instead, they found 50 students alive and warm, clustered together in the central area, being led in breathing exercises by a small human woman. The story spread across the galaxy. Within days, a first-year student from a death world had saved an entire research station. She had walked through deadly cold. She had lifted debris with her bare hands. She had organized a rescue operation while experienced professors stood paralyzed with fear. The Galactic Council demanded a full briefing. Yuna stood before them in the Great Chamber, a vast circular room where the most important decisions of galactic civilization were made. Council members from dozens of species looked down at her from floating platforms. She felt very small, but she stood straight. Her father Taiho had always said to stand straight when facing difficulty. "We have reviewed your actions during the incident," said the council speaker, an ancient being made of living stone. "You saved 50 lives. We wish to understand how this was possible." Yuna considered her answer carefully. "I did what anyone from my world would have done. I saw people in danger. I helped them. But the conditions were lethal. Temperatures that would kill any other species in minutes. Not lethal for humans. Dangerous, yes. Uncomfortable, certainly. But not lethal. We have adapted to survive extreme conditions." The council fell silent. Then they called for Earth's planetary file to be displayed. Yuna had never seen the official galactic assessment of her homeworld. As the data scrolled across the massive screens, She understood for the first time how the galaxy saw Earth. Planet classification: Class 12 Deathworld. Habitation status: quarantine. Warning level: extreme. Surface gravity 1.0 g. Council note: significantly higher than galactic standard. Prolonged exposure will cause skeletal and muscular damage to most species. Atmospheric composition: 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen. Council note: oxygen is a corrosive and flammable gas. The atmosphere is essentially a slow-burning poison. Climate: highly unstable. Seasonal temperature variations of up to 70 degrees standard. Regular natural disasters including hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and floods. Ecosystem: dominated by apex predators. Megafauna prevalent. Even plant life frequently toxic, carnivorous, or both. Microbial life extremely aggressive. Dominant species: Homo sapiens. Persistence hunters, pack bonders. Anomalous stress response. Capable of functioning under extreme duress. Known to form emotional attachments with non-sapient creatures and inanimate objects. Warning: do not engage. Do not colonize. Do not provoke. Una, read the warning 3 times. Do not provoke. They were afraid of humans. A council member spoke, a delicate being with translucent wings. Your species evolved on this world? And survived? Not just survived, Una said quietly. We thrived. We built civilizations. We created art and music and literature. We fell in love. We raised families. We explored every corner of our world, from the frozen poles to the burning deserts to the bottom of our oceans. Your oceans? The bodies of liquid water that cover most of your planet. Yes, they are full of life. Beautiful and dangerous. We learned to sail across them. We built boats, and then ships. And then submarines that could dive to the deepest trenches. The council members exchanged looks of what might have been disbelief. And your species fights, the stone speaker said slowly. We have records. You wage war against each other. Una felt a flash of shame, but she did not look away. Yes, we have fought terrible wars. We have done terrible things to each other. This is the dark side of our nature. But we have also learned from these horrors. We have grown. We are still learning to be better. Why would a species fight its own kind? Una thought about this. About all the history she had studied. About all the stories her grandmother had told her. Because we care deeply, she said finally. We feel love and loyalty so strongly that we will fight to protect what we love. Sometimes that love becomes twisted. Sometimes we see differences instead of similarities. But the root of it is always the same. We are creatures of intense emotion. We bond with our families, our friends, our communities, and we will do anything to protect those bonds. A long silence followed. Then Coldscale spoke. He had been brought before the council as a witness. He still moved stiffly from his injuries, but he had insisted on being present. I treated her badly, Coldscale said, his voice echoing in the chamber. When she first arrived, I saw her as lesser. A primitive from a primitive world. I mocked her. I tried to humiliate her. He paused, and his golden eyes met Una's. And when I was trapped and dying, she saved my life. She walked through cold that should have killed her, lifted weight that should have crushed her, and carried me to safety. She owed me nothing. Less than nothing. But she saved me anyway. Why? The speaker asked Una directly. Una thought about her grandmother soon, okay. She thought about the stories of war and famine and loss. She thought about how, through all of that suffering, her grandmother had never stopped helping others. Even when she had nothing, she shared what little she had. Because that is who we are, Una said. We endure. And then we adapt. And then we help others do the same. On Earth, we have a saying, no one left behind. It means that when you are part of a group, you do not abandon anyone. Ever. Even if they are difficult. Even if they are different. Even if they were unkind to you. The stone speaker leaned forward. Even your enemies? Especially your enemies, Una said. Because the only way to stop having enemies is to turn them into friends. The chamber fell silent again. But this silence was different. Not confusion or fear. Something deeper. Something like understanding. Later that day, Cold Scale found Una sitting alone in a small garden on the academy grounds. She was eating something from a container she had brought from Earth. What is that? He asked, sitting beside her carefully. Kimchi. Fermented vegetables. My mother made it for me before I left Earth. It is almost finished now. She held out the container. Would you like to try some? Cold Scale hesitated. Then he took a small piece with his clawed fingers and put it in his mouth. His eyes went wide. His scales changed color. He made a sound that might have been choking. It is intense, he managed. Una laughed. It was the first real laugh she had enjoyed at the academy. Yes, it takes some getting used to. But once you develop a taste for it, nothing else compares. Cold Scale swallowed hard and sat quietly for a moment. Then he spoke. I am sorry, he said, for how I treated you. I was wrong. I judged you based on fear and ignorance. I thought that because your world was dangerous, you must be dangerous too. But that is not true. You are kind, stronger than me in every way, and yet kind. Una looked at him. She saw the shame in his eyes, the genuine regret, and she made a decision. Thank you for apologizing, she said. It takes courage to admit when you are wrong. More courage than most people have. I want to understand better, Cold Scale said. Your world. Your people. Will you teach me? Una smiled and held out another piece of kimchi. Let us start with this, she said. Take another bite. Do not give up this time. Cold Scale took the kimchi. He ate it. His eyes watered. But he did not spit it out. It was a beginning. In the galaxy far above them. Stars continued their ancient dance. And somewhere, on a small blue planet circling a yellow sun, a species that should not have survived continued to reach for the stars. They were called humans, and the galaxy was finally beginning to understand what that meant. 1 year had passed since the incident at the research station. The academy had changed in that time. Una had changed it. She stood now in the great lecture hall, where she had once been a frightened first-year student, watching aliens react with horror to her description of snow. But she was no longer a student. Today, she stood at the front of the room, facing rows of eager faces from across the galaxy. She was Professor Una now, the Academy's first human instructor. Her course was called Survival and Adaptation, Lessons from Deathworld Species. The registration had filled within seconds of opening. Students who had once avoided her now fought for seats in her classroom. Those who could not get in watched recorded lectures and formed study groups to discuss her teachings. Welcome to the first day, Una said, her voice calm and warm. I know many of you have questions about Earth and about humans. Some of you might still be afraid. That is okay. Fear of the unknown is natural. But today, we begin replacing fear with understanding. A young crystalline student raised a trembling appendage. Professor, is it true that humans can survive being struck by lightning? Una smiled. It was the same warm, patient smile her mother Yunji had always given her when she asked difficult questions as a child. Some of us, she said. It depends on many factors. But yes, humans have survived lightning strikes. Some have survived multiple strikes. We are surprisingly durable. She paused, remembering something. Let me tell you about the time my uncle Jinho decided to fight a wild boar with a stick. The students leaned forward, their various sensory organs focused entirely on her. And Yuna told the story. About her uncle's stubbornness. About the boar's fury. About how Jinho had won not through strength but through persistence, dodging and striking and refusing to give up until the boar finally decided this particular human was too much trouble. The students listened in amazement, not with fear anymore, with wonder. After class, Dory approached her desk. Dory had changed too over the past year. No longer small and timid, Dory now moved with quiet confidence. Their skin glowed with healthy patterns of blue and green. They had become Yuna's teaching assistant, helping translate human concepts into terms other species could understand. That was a wonderful first lecture, Dory said. I think they actually understood. Not just the facts, but the spirit behind them. That is all I can hope for, Yuna said. Understanding is the first step. Everything else follows from there. The door opened and Cold Scale entered. He walked differently now. Not with the arrogance of before, but with a steady purpose. He had enrolled in Yuna's advanced seminar, determined to learn everything she could teach him. Professor, he said formally, then smiled slightly. I still cannot get used to calling you that. Neither can I, Yuna admitted. Some mornings I wake up expecting to be back in the remedial physical rehabilitation class. Cold Scale laughed. It was a sound that would have been impossible a year ago. They had become friends in the months since the incident. Real friends, built on mutual respect and shared hardship. I brought you something, Cold Scale said, pulling out a small package. Food from my homeworld. Very spicy. I thought you might enjoy it since you seem to like things that burn. Yuna opened the package and took a careful bite. It was indeed spicy, though nothing compared to her grandmother's cooking. But the gesture meant more than the taste. Thank you, she said sincerely. I will save some to share with my next class. A notification chimed on her communication device. It was a message from the Galactic Council. They were officially upgrading Earth's status from quarantine to protected cultural reserve. Diplomatic channels were opening. Human ambassadors would soon travel to other worlds. The galaxy was ready to welcome humanity. Yuna read the message and felt tears forming in her eyes. She thought about all the humans throughout history who had dreamed of reaching the stars. Explorers and scientists and dreamers who had looked up at the night sky and wondered what was out there. They would never know that their descendants had finally made it. But in a way, they were all here with her. Good news? Dory asked. The best news, Yuna said. Earth is no longer alone. That evening, she walked through the academy gardens with Soft Wing. Her former doormate had become one of her closest friends, despite their rocky beginning. Soft Wing had written a book about their friendship titled The Girl from the Death Planet. It had become a galactic bestseller. Do you ever miss home? Soft Wing asked, her great moth wings catching the light of the setting suns. Yuna considered the question carefully. Every day. I miss my parents. I miss my grandmother's cooking. I miss the smell of rain on hot summer days and the crunch of snow under my boots in winter. But I also know that I am here for a reason. I am building a bridge between my world and all the others. That is worth the loneliness. You are not lonely, Soft Wing said gently. Not anymore. You have us. It was true. Yuna had found a family here among the stars. Different from her family on Earth, but just as real. Just as important. The next morning, Yuna stood before her advanced seminar. The room was full of students who had once feared humans, who had once thought of Earth as a nightmare world of death and danger. Now they looked at her with respect and curiosity. Today, we discuss the most important lesson Earth can teach, she said. It is not about survival techniques or physical endurance. It is about something deeper. She paused, gathering her thoughts. On Earth, we have faced extinction many times. Ice ages, plagues, wars, disasters beyond imagination. We should have died out. By all logic, we should not exist. But we are still here. Do you know why? The students waited in silence. Because we take care of each other, Una said. That is our greatest strength. Not our bones or our muscles or our immune systems. Our ability to love. To form bonds that cannot be broken. To look at a stranger and see a potential friend instead of an enemy. She thought about her father Taiho, who had worked endless hours to give his family a better life. Her mother Yunji, who had stayed up all night when Yuna was sick, never complaining, never giving up. Her grandmother Sunoke, who had survived horrors but still smiled every morning. Deathworlds do not create monsters, Yuna continued. They create survivors. And survivors know the value of every single life. We know how fragile existence is. We know how precious each moment is. So we fight for each other. We sacrifice for each other. We love fiercely because we know that love might be taken away at any moment. Cold Scale nodded slowly, understanding in his golden eyes. That is what I want to teach you, Una said. Not how to survive alone. How to survive together. How to build bonds that make you stronger than you ever could be alone. How to look at the universe and say, this is hard. This is dangerous. But we will face it together, and we will not fail. She smiled, and in that smile was all the warmth and strength of Earth. That is what it means to be human. And now, I hope you understand. The students did not applaud. Applause felt too small for the moment. Instead, they sat in thoughtful silence, absorbing the lesson. Yuna looked out the window at the alien sky, thinking of the small blue planet so far away. She had come here alone and afraid, underestimated by everyone. Now she was a teacher, a friend, a bridge between worlds. The legend of Earth was spreading across the galaxy. Not a legend of monsters and death. A legend of survivors. Of fighters. Of people who refused to give up, no matter how hard things got. Somewhere, her grandmother Sunoke was smiling. The new dawn had arrived. And humanity was ready.